I paid over $500 just to ask permission to change the damn lock on my own front door. Then they told me no. The lock cost $50. Welcome to life under my HOA. When I bought the place, I thought I was finally getting a break. After the divorce and the chaos of city living, I was just looking for somewhere quiet, somewhere clean, predictable, with no more late-night sirens or arguing neighbors or coming home to find someone parked on your lawn because they didn't see the sign. That's how I ended up here. Neat little row of townhouses tucked behind one of those master-planned community signs with a stone fountain and flowers that change color with the seasons. The kind of place where the grass is always just a little too green and everyone waves with only 2 fingers from the steering wheel. I remember pulling up with the moving truck and thinking, this looks like stability. It looked like the kind of place people go when they figured life out. The HOA brochure called it peaceful modern living. They had that generic stock photo of a guy jogging with a golden retriever while his wife pushed a stroller down the sidewalk in matching Lululemon. I didn't even blink at the fine print. I mean, sure, there was an HOA, but so what? Everyone I talked to made it sound like just another thing you paid for in exchange for trimmed hedges and nice Christmas lights. Besides, it was a good deal. 2 bedrooms, 2 baths, garage, clean paint job, decent flooring, and a little patio out back. It even had those upgraded countertops I used to roll my eyes at on Zillow. It felt solid, not flashy, not fixer-upper, just done. I was actually kind of proud of myself. For the first time in years, I wasn't splitting bills with anyone, wasn't crashing on someone's couch, wasn't sleeping next to my phone in case my lawyer called. I had my own place, my space, my rules. That part didn't last. But in the beginning, everything was fine. Better than fine, actually. I settled into a routine. Work during the day, remote job doing back-end architecture for a telecom company. I'd crack open the patio door for air, make a sandwich around 2, and finish up before the neighborhood kids got off the bus and started their daily sidewalk scooter derby. I was that guy who nodded at neighbors but didn't overdo it. The hey man guy, the guy who picks up his packages on time, parks straight, brings his trash bins in early. I didn't throw parties, didn't play music loud, didn't let the lawn get wild. I just wanted to live in peace. Then the packages started going missing. At first, I figured it was a fluke. Maybe FedEx misdelivered it. Maybe the wind blew it behind a bush. But then it happened again. And again. Small stuff at first. Cables, a water filter, one of those dumb resistance bands I was never going to use anyway. Then my Amazon Echo. And then a week later, the new external SSD I'd been waiting on for work just vanished. Tracking showed delivered. The front porch was empty. That was the first time I thought, okay, maybe I need a better lock. Not because the front door was failing, it wasn't. But if someone was getting bold enough to walk up and swipe stuff in broad daylight, who's to say they wouldn't go for the real deal next time? Besides, I'd been meaning to upgrade the deadbolt anyway. The one that came with the place felt like it belonged on a bathroom stall. Nothing wrong with it technically, it just didn't feel like it could stop much more than a polite knock. I started looking into smart locks. I wasn't trying to turn my place into a fortress or a Bond villain lair or anything. I just wanted something simple. A deadbolt I could control from my phone, with a code I could punch in when I locked myself out at 2 a.m., hypothetically speaking. I found one that checked all the boxes. Clean design, Wi-Fi enabled, nothing flashy on the outside. From the front, it looked like a normal lock. No glowing panels, no weird shape, no big tech bro lives here vibe. And it wasn't even expensive. $50 on sale. The thing practically came with an apology. I figured, hell, it's my front door. I'll just install it this weekend. Then I remembered the HOA. You'd think asking permission to change the bolt on your own damn door would be a 5-minute thing. Click a box, submit a form, wait for someone in a golf cart to give a thumbs up. I filled out the application online, attached the photo of the lock. I even included a screenshot from the company's website showing how it looks the same as a regular one from the outside. I was being courteous, responsible. I wanted it on record that I followed their process. What I got back wasn't just unexpected, it was insulting. They wanted a $185 application review fee and a $350 refundable deposit in case of required restoration to original condition. I read that sentence 3 times. Restoration? To a door lock? What were they expecting me to do, install a medieval drawbridge? At first I laughed, then I got mad. Then I figured maybe it was just some boilerplate form, and once I explained that it was just a simple swap, they'd waive the fees or at least reconsider. So I emailed. Polite, clear, direct. Told them it was a small, unobtrusive change for security, wouldn't affect the look of the building, and that I'd be happy to reverse it myself if needed. They replied with 2 lines. Please submit payment as outlined. Architectural review is mandatory for any exterior modifications. Approval is not guaranteed. That was it. I hadn't even paid yet, and they were already treating it like I'd painted flames on my garage door. And that was the moment I realized this wasn't about the lock. This was about control. And I was about to learn just how far they'd go to keep it. So here's where things started to feel off. I hadn't paid the fee yet. I was still deciding whether I should just eat the cost or say screw it and install the lock myself like a normal adult with a mortgage. But before I even made that choice, something weird happened. I came home one afternoon, walked up to my door, and noticed this folded piece of paper wedged in the frame, under the handle. Not taped, not mailed, just stuck there like some cheap parking ticket. I figured it was a flyer or another HOA newsletter full of passive-aggressive tips about acceptable flagpole placement. Nope, it was a notice of exterior noncompliance. That was the actual title. Bold, red letters. It looked like a final eviction notice, which is ironic considering it was about my porch light. The letter said my porch light fixture was not consistent with community guidelines and needed to be brought into compliance within 10 days, or I'd face a $75 fine. It even had a blurry photo of the light taken from the sidewalk. And when I say blurry, I mean it looked like someone took it with a potato. Now here's the punchline. I never changed the porch light, not once. It was the exact same fixture that was there the day I moved in. It wasn't some neon green alien head or a vintage lantern from Salem. Just a regular, black, basic-ass porch light. The kind you could find in any hardware store across America for $20. I stood there staring at the paper and this chill crept down my back. Not the spooky kind, more like that slow burn when you realize something's not random, that someone's watching you a little too closely. And it hit me. They were pissed, not because of the light, not even really because of the smart lock, but because I had questioned the process. Because I didn't just pay the damn fee like a good little homeowner and wait quietly for their rubber stamp of approval. So they found something, anything, to put on paper. Something that sounded official enough to remind me who was in charge. I went inside, pulled up the HOA documents they'd given me when I moved in, and scrolled until I found the section on exterior lighting. You know what it said? That all fixtures must be in harmony with existing community aesthetics. That's it. No models, no brands, no specific requirements. So basically, if they decided your light felt wrong, you were screwed. I emailed back and asked for clarification. What exactly was wrong with it, and why now, months after moving in, it was suddenly a problem? I was careful with my tone. Professional, director, even signed off with thanks in advance. They responded the next morning with a single sentence. All architectural decisions are final and do not require justification. That's when I knew for sure. This wasn't about a light. This was step one, a warning shot. And for the first time since moving in, I started to get this tight feeling in my chest. Like something wasn't safe anymore. Not physically, but deeper than that. Like the walls weren't yours. The rules could change. The rug could be pulled out at any second, and they'd still smile at you in the driveway like nothing happened. I didn't even want to install a damn chandelier. I just wanted to feel like I could close my door and know that it was mine on the other side. But that letter? That letter was their way of saying, not unless we say so. And something in me quietly started to clench its fists. I let the porch light thing go. I figured, fine, if they want to flex over a light fixture I didn't even install, let them have their win. I wasn't looking for a fight, I just wanted to move on. But they didn't. A couple weeks later, I got another notice. This time, it was about my trash cans. Apparently, I'd left them in view from the street for an extended period of time. And listen, I'm the kind of guy who rolls them back the second the truck pulls away. I've got that Midwestern guilt baked into my DNA. I don't leave things out. I don't make a mess. My driveway's cleaner than most hospital rooms. Still, there it was. Another blurry photo, taken from some creepy angle that made it look like someone had walked up my lawn to snap it. And the best part? The timestamp in the corner was from the same day I'd worked from my patio, where I definitely didn't see any HOA volunteers doing a neighborhood sweep. They didn't even knock, just quietly stalked me like wildlife and left their little warning. That's when I started noticing it. The glances. People in the neighborhood, folks I'd nodded to for months, stopped returning it. Or if they did, it was weirdly delayed, like they were trying to decide if I was worth acknowledging. Some even crossed the street early during walks, like I was contagious. Then came the newsletter, a cheery 2-page PDF with announcements about the community barbecue and a paragraph buried near the bottom titled Reminder on Compliance Expectations. It talked about recent cases of residents bypassing established architectural protocols and how consistent enforcement maintains the integrity and harmony of our shared spaces. No names, but it felt like someone was talking directly at me with a megaphone that smiled. I was being labeled, quietly, strategically, like a troublemaker, a rogue element, and just when I thought they'd cooled off, I got another letter, this one hand-delivered in an envelope. Felt almost classy. Inside was an advisory notification stating that my security camera, the one facing my own driveway, was not positioned in accordance with privacy standards, and that I needed to adjust or remove it. They even cited a line from the bylaws I'd never seen before, something about devices capable of observation beyond property bounds. I sat there holding that letter, trying to process the absurdity. The camera wasn't pointed at anyone else's windows. It wasn't a drone. It was angled to cover my own garage and front walkway, because, people were stealing stuff. The irony was surreal. These people wanted to fine me for trying to prevent crime, for doing the job they clearly weren't interested in. I emailed them again. Firm, this time. I explained the camera's angle, offered to show them the footage, even attached a screenshot proving it didn't capture anything beyond my front steps. No reply. I waited. 3 days later, a violation notice appeared in my mailbox with a $100 fine. No explanation, no opportunity for appeal. Just a due date and a vague threat about further escalation. That's when it clicked. They weren't reacting to violations, they were creating them. Manufacturing pressure. I wasn't being managed, I was being squeezed. Slowly, deliberately, like they were trying to wear me down until I either gave up and fell in line or did something they could really nail me for. And all of it, every single step, led back to that damn lock, a $50 piece of plastic and metal I hadn't even installed yet. I called Kevin, the local locksmith a friend had recommended, just to ask a few questions. I didn't even mention the HOA, just wanted to know about options, about what's standard, what's stealthy. He got quiet real fast, said he didn't work in my development anymore, said too many people had run into problems after private installs. Told me, and I swear this was his exact phrase, "It's not worth the heat from your committee, they've got people." People, like it was the mob. I laughed when he said it, but not for long, because that's when I realized this wasn't just petty power tripping anymore. It was targeted, calculated. They were turning the screws one notch at a time, and I was starting to feel it. Even with the door locked, I didn't want to fight them. I really didn't. I'm not the type who thrives on conflict. I'm the guy who says no worries even when I am, in fact, full of worries. The guy who lets someone merge at the last second and waves like it was his idea. I still return my shopping cart. I still hold doors for people who don't say, "Thank you." I don't go looking for trouble. But I also don't like being pushed around. And whatever this was, this slow burn campaign of warnings, fines, cold shoulders, it felt like something way bigger than a lock. So I did what any semi-functional adult with a laptop and too much coffee would do. I started reading. I pulled out every document the HOA had ever sent me. Scanned the bylaws, covenants, regulations, all written in that passive-aggressive corporate tone that says community when it means control. Half of it read like it was translated from ancient Latin by a robot with trust issues. But I kept going. I found the section on architectural modifications. It said any substantial exterior alteration required approval from the committee. But smart locks? Not mentioned. Not once. I even searched the PDF for the words lock, deadbolt, security device, and door hardware. Nothing. So I called the management company, left a message with someone named Sandra, who returned it with the enthusiasm of someone being forced to apologize for a company she secretly hates. I explained my situation. Kept it calm, kept it clear. Told her about the fines, the non-answers, the odd timing of everything. I asked if there was any kind of appeal process, or maybe just someone I could speak to directly on the committee. She said she'd look into it and get back to me. 3 days went by. Nothing. So I called again. Got a different person this time, Steve, who sounded like he was halfway through a sandwich. I went through the story again, a little less calmly now. He said he'd noted in the system. I asked what that meant. He said, "We're not able to share internal committee decisions with residents." I said, "It's my door." He said, "Understood." I said, "So how do I resolve this?" He paused like I'd just asked him the meaning of life and then said, "Most residents just follow the guidelines." That was the whole answer, like I was the weird one for asking. Next, I tried the city. Thought maybe there was a housing department or mediation service that dealt with overreaching HOAs. I ended up on hold for 40 minutes before a woman finally transferred me to someone's voicemail that was full. Just beep, deadline. I even talked to a friend of mine who's a real estate attorney. I wasn't trying to sue anybody, I just wanted to know if there was a simple path through all this. He asked for a copy of the CC and Rs, skimmed them, then leaned back in his chair and said, "You're not going to like this." Apparently, in California, HOAs are practically their own little fiefdoms. They can fine you, restrict you, shut down your requests, and as long as they're within the scope of the governing documents, you're basically stuck unless you want to sue, which costs thousands, sometimes tens of thousands, for a damn lock. He said, you could fight it, sure. But they've got all the time and no incentive to back down. They're not trying to be right. They're trying to be in charge. So that's where I was. No help from the management company, no help from the city, no easy legal angle. I wasn't even trying to win some moral crusade. I just didn't want to keep getting ambushed for doing nothing wrong. At one point, I even tried writing a full-blown letter, a real one, like with paragraphs and structure and actual grammar. I printed it, signed it, and hand-delivered it to their Dropbox like it was a goddamn peace offering. It explained the situation. I acknowledged their authority, expressed my commitment to community standards, and respectfully requested a reevaluation of my smart lock application, especially given the fact that the model I chose looked exactly like the original. No reply, not even a form letter. Just silence. Then the real kicker came. I was walking to my mailbox and noticed one of the committee members, Gregory, the HOA guy with the slicked back hair and a Lexus he waxes like it's a religion, talking to my neighbor across the street. They both looked over when I passed. Gregory gave me this smile, not friendly, not even smug, just empty, like a guy who's already decided how your story ends. I said, "Morning." He said, "Compliance is a team effort, Dan." That's all he said. Then turned back to his conversation. Not "good morning," not "how's it going?" Just that little reminder, slipped into my ears like a splinter I wouldn't be able to dig out later. I went back inside and sat at my kitchen table and just stared at the letter they'd sent me, the one with the trash can violation sitting next to the camera fine, and the porch light warning, and the envelope with the denied stamp on my lock application. It all felt so coordinated. Not loud, not dramatic, just precise, surgical. I wasn't dealing with an overworked HOA. I was dealing with one that knew exactly what it was doing. And the worst part? Every polite, proper adult thing I tried had gotten me nowhere. That's when I realized I wasn't just going to have to fight them. I was going to have to beat them at their own game. I honestly don't know what made me walk into the library that day. Maybe it was the air conditioning. Maybe I just needed to be somewhere nobody could find me for existing. Or maybe I was just tired of staring at that stack of violation notices on my kitchen counter and waiting for some magical adultier adult to come fix it. I wasn't there for anything in particular, just wandering around, drinking stale machine coffee and pretending to browse nonfiction while my brain played reruns of every snide remark Gregory had made in the last month. That's when I found myself in the local records section, or more accurately, when the chair I picked to sit and sulk happened to be next to the filing cabinet labeled Community Associations, Orange County. I remember just staring at that drawer for a minute, like it had winked at me. I wasn't even sure if it was public info or something only librarians were allowed to touch with special gloves, but nobody stopped me, so I opened it. Inside were folders, real paper, not PDFs, not newsletters, actual old-school paperwork filed by hand from all sorts of HOAs in the area, stuff going back years. Most of it looked like the kind of thing only a board auditor or a very lonely person would ever read. Minutes from board meetings, election certifications, architectural policy updates. Then I found ours. I pulled the folder and sat down with it. At first, it was just boring junk, meeting notes about landscaping contracts and discussions about pet waste signage. But then I flipped to a scanned page that looked odd. It was an old architectural committee amendment from almost a decade ago, long before I lived there. It listed a bunch of approved modifications, including paint schemes, fencing materials, and, you guessed it, lock sets. There was even a section for low-visibility security hardware, including certain brands of smart locks. 2 of the models listed were still being sold today. One of them? Mine. I blinked. Read it again. Same result. The HOA had previously approved my exact smart lock model, by name, with diagrams. And the kicker? That amendment was still valid. There was nothing saying it had been repealed, no superseding policy. In fact, the newer documents just kind of ignored it. as if someone had quietly pushed it aside and hoped nobody would remember it existed. Now, I'm not a lawyer, but even I know that if your rules say something's allowed and you never officially change them, you can't just pretend they don't count anymore. That's not how rules work. That's not how any of this works. So I took photos. Every page, every angle, sent them to myself twice, just in case some HOA gremlin tried to delete them from the cloud out of spite. And suddenly the whole narrative shifted. I wasn't just some stubborn homeowner with a rebellious streak. I wasn't even a guy pushing for a new policy. I was a guy asking for something that had already been approved. They weren't denying my application because of aesthetics. They weren't protecting the community. They were breaking their own damn rules. Whether it was incompetence or something dirtier, I didn't know yet, but it didn't matter, because now I had something I didn't have before. Leverage, not speculation, not feelings, cold, documented proof. I sat there in that library for a while, just staring at my phone, heart thudding like I'd stumbled onto a cheat code in real life. For the first time since this mess started, I wasn't outnumbered. I wasn't cornered. I had something they didn't expect, and I had no intention of keeping it quiet. I didn't sleep much that night. Not in the dramatic pacing around kind of way, more like my brain had locked itself in a conference room and was holding an emergency strategy session without telling me. I'd close my eyes and see Gregory's face. That smug, nothing you do matters smile. Then I'd see that page from the amendment folder. That single line listing my lock model sitting there in black and white like a forgotten treasure map. That was the moment I realized this wasn't about getting revenge. It wasn't even about getting a lock installed anymore. This was about finally flipping the power dynamic. For months they'd been stacking the deck, acting like I was the one out of line, like I was lucky just to exist on their turf. But now, I had something they didn't know I had, and I wasn't going to waste it swinging blindly. I wanted this to land like a piano out a third-story window, so I started building my case. First, I needed someone who actually knew how these documents worked, not just HOA law in the general sense, but the deep, annoying, fine print kind. The kind where you can't sneeze on your porch without submitting a form in triplicate. Enter Victor. Victor was a guy I'd met at a friend's barbecue a couple years back. He was a real estate attorney who'd spent the last decade in a never-ending series of fights with HOAs up and down the state. The only reason I remembered him was because he told this unhinged story about getting fined for hanging wind chimes in unauthorized tones. I figured if anyone understood HOA logic, it was the guy who got cited for too much whimsy. I gave him a call, told him I wasn't looking to file a lawsuit yet, but I had something I needed verified. Sent him the photos from the library folder and the most recent denial letter. He called me back after skimming it for 10 minutes and said, "Yeah, this is good. This is really good." Apparently, under Davis-Sterling, the law that governs HOAs in California, if an architectural guideline has been approved and hasn't been repealed through official channels, it remains valid and enforceable. More importantly, HOAs are required to disclose all governing documents when making decisions. If they omit something, especially something that contradicts their denial, that can be seen as intentional misrepresentation. I asked him if that was, illegal. He said, "It's not arson, but it's shady as hell, especially if it's part of a pattern." So we kept digging. Victor requested a formal document disclosure from the HOA under the law. As a homeowner, I was entitled to a full copy of all active amendments, meeting notes, and committee decisions within a certain time frame. And, shockingly, the amendment I found in the library was missing from the package they sent us. Convenient. That's when Victor got serious. He told me this was more than just a petty conflict. It was a potential case of selective enforcement and document suppression. If it went to court, a judge might not just side with me, they might audit everything the HOA had done in the last decade. I started organizing everything. Emails, letters, screenshots, timestamps. I made a Google Drive that looked like a digital crime board. I even made color-coded folders, which is saying something because I haven't been that organized since I built my own PC in college. Meanwhile, I went back to the community, quietly. I talked to a few neighbors, ones I hadn't seen at the monthly potlucks or HOA Zoom calls. I asked them about their experiences, if they'd ever had anything denied, if they'd ever been asked to pay weird review fees or got fined for stuff that didn't make sense. That's when the stories started pouring out. A woman named Brenda had applied to put a safety railing on her front steps. Denied. A guy named Jorge had tried to install drought-friendly landscaping. Denied. But both of them had done it after others on the same street had done the exact same thing without any issues. And you'll never guess what those people had in common. They were all on good terms with Gregory. It wasn't just me. This wasn't personal. It was political. Gregory and his little circle had been running the HOA like a private country club, picking and choosing what got approved, who got fined, and what rules applied depending on who you were. And the kicker? They'd been sweeping old documents under the rug so they could rewrite the story whenever it suited them. Victor told me we had 3 solid angles. 1, the suppression of a valid amendment. 2, the pattern of selective enforcement. And 3, a potential conflict of interest, because the architectural review contractor they used for denials. Turned out that guy used to be in business with Gregory. I found the LLC info buried in public records online. Same last name, same address, same everything. We didn't need to sue, not yet. What we needed was sunlight, so the plan was this. Expose the paper trail. Show the pattern. Present the amendment. Force them into a corner, not by yelling, not by threatening, but by walking in with a stack of evidence so clean it smelled like fresh toner. If they wanted to play bureaucracy, fine. I was going to outpaper them. And when the time came, I'd do it in front of the one audience they still feared, the rest of the neighborhood. The funny thing about taking action, real action, is that it never feels like a movie. There's no dramatic music, no slow-mo, no clever montage where I'm printing off documents while sipping coffee like some legal ninja. There's just a guy sitting at his kitchen table, surrounded by paper, blinking into the glow of his laptop at 2 in the morning and wondering if he remembered to feed the cat. But that morning, I woke up with purpose. I wasn't going to war. I was going to a board meeting. The HOA held them once a month in the rec center off the main road. Same beige room, same bad coffee, same 7 folding chairs in a circle like a support group for the power-hungry. I'd sat through 1 or 2 when I first moved in, mostly out of curiosity. Nothing ever happened, just updates about shrub maintenance and vague mentions of compliance matters. This one was different. I showed up early, not because I'm one of those people, but because I wanted a front row seat. I brought my binder, the big one, the one with tab dividers and sticky notes. I didn't say much when I walked in, just nodded, sat down, and waited. Gregory was already there. Of course he was. He had that same air of smug confidence, like someone who thinks he's untouchable because he alphabetized his war crimes. He gave me a tight-lipped smile and said, "Good to see you, Dan." I said, "Likewise. Hope you brought your reading glasses." He didn't get it. Yet. The meeting started like usual, old business, new business, budget stuff no one cared about. Then came the open forum, where residents could bring up issues. I waited until it got quiet. Then I stood up and said, "I'd like to speak about a pattern of non-compliance from the board." That got their attention. I didn't yell, didn't rant. I opened the binder, took out the first page, and laid it on the table in front of them. The old amendment, the one listing my smart lock by name. I explained where I found it. Read the date, read the approval stamp. Then I pulled out my application denial, highlighting the fact that they'd never referenced this document. Not once. I flipped the page. Then came the violation letters, trash cans, porch lights, cameras, all issued after my original lock request. I explained the timeline, how they escalated after I questioned the process, how none of those violations had ever been issued to other homes with the exact same setups. I had photos to prove it, dates, screenshots. One neighbor even gave me written consent to use their example. Flip. Then came the contractor. The architectural consultant Gregory insisted the board had no personal ties to. I held up the business registration printout. His name. Gregory's name. Same address. Same tax ID. Closed 2 years ago, but that relationship still very real. At that point, Gregory was shifting in his chair like he'd just swallowed a thumbtack. One of the other board members, Linda, who had barely looked at me since the meeting started, leaned forward and said, "Wait, is this true?" I said, "You tell me. You've been signing off on it." Then I pulled out the big one, the legal opinion letter. Victor had written it up, tight, clean, packed with citations. It laid out how the board had failed to disclose governing documents, selectively enforced policy, and potentially misrepresented committee decisions in a way that violated both state law and the community's own charter. I handed out copies. One for each board member, one for the HOA manager, one for Gregory, which I slid across the table like I was dealing poker. No one spoke for a full minute. Gregory opened his mouth to say something, but before he could, Linda cut him off. "I want to make a motion to postpone all compliance actions related to this matter until further review." Gregory started to object, but now the others were finally waking up. Another board member, Patricia, nodded and said, "Yeah, we need to look at this. This isn't just a homeowner being difficult." That part hit me harder than I expected, because for months, that's exactly what they'd made me feel like. The vote passed, motion carried. Then Linda turned to me and asked, "Would you be willing to provide a digital copy of all this?" I said, already emailed it. Check your inbox. The meeting wrapped after that, real quiet. People filed out, some with that stunned look like they just watched someone pull a tablecloth off a dinner setting and leave the wine glass standing. A few neighbors gave me nods, real ones this time. One guy even clapped me on the back and whispered, "Damn, that was surgical." Gregory didn't say a word, just grabbed his folder and left, his mouth set in this tight little line like he couldn't decide whether to be angry or terrified. And me? I went home, shut the door, sat on my couch. For the first time in what felt like forever, I didn't check the mailbox, didn't check the cameras, didn't check for new notices. I just sat there smiling, thinking, checkmate, asshole. But it wasn't over yet. Not until it was public. Not until the whole community saw what had really been going on. That part was coming next. About a week after the meeting, something shifted. I could feel it in the way people looked at me. Not like before, when I was radioactive. This was different, curious. Like folks weren't sure if I was a hero or a lunatic, but they were starting to lean toward the former. Even Brenda from down the street, who once asked the HOA for permission to plant succulents, stopped me while I was pulling weeds and said, "So, what really happened at the meeting?" I told her. Nothing dramatic, just facts, just the truth. She nodded slowly like she already knew but needed someone else to say it out loud first. That's when I realized the real power move wasn't in beating the HOA behind closed doors. It was in bringing their games out into the sunlight where they couldn't control the script anymore. So I did what they'd never expect. I wrote it all down. Every part of it, start to finish. The violations, the photos, the fake consultant connection, the amendment they forgot existed. I turned it into a clean 5-page summary with links to all the evidence. Not a rant, not a manifesto. Just a calm, detailed breakdown of exactly how the HOA had been operating and how easily anyone in the neighborhood could be next. Then I printed 60 copies and started walking. I dropped them in mailboxes. I handed them to neighbors I barely knew. I pinned one to the community board next to the yoga class flyers and found cat photos. I emailed the PDF to the neighborhood listserv with a subject line that just said, "Know your rights and theirs." The reaction was instant. I started getting emails, texts, even handwritten notes. People I hadn't heard from in months suddenly had stories of their own. One guy, Mark, said the board denied his solar panel install because it was aesthetic disruption, while Gregory's house had panels installed a year earlier, no issue. Another woman, Celine, had been fined for a non-conforming mailbox color, even though it matched the HOA's official color guide. It was like breaking a dam. Once people realized they weren't alone, they started speaking. And once they started speaking, they started organizing. Within days, someone set up a private Facebook group, Oak Haven Homeowners for Transparency. I didn't create it, but I got added immediately, and that thing exploded. 50 people joined the first night, more every day, and they weren't just venting, they were planning. Turns out, when you make people feel powerless long enough, they either fold or they wake up angry. And oh, we were wide awake now. Then came the bombshell. Someone found old budget records. Not just the standard annual stuff, but a breakdown of consulting fees. Thousands of dollars paid out over the last 2 years to a shell company with no contact info, no address, just a name that, when we Googled it, came back as dissolved in another county, and the signature on the checks, Gregory's. That was the final spark. At the next HOA meeting, this one absolutely packed, standing room only, Linda opened with a statement. She thanked the community for engaging. She acknowledged the emails, the records, the evidence. Then she said the board had reviewed everything and would be voting on a motion to suspend Gregory pending an independent audit of his activities and financial decisions. He didn't even try to argue, just sat there, tight-jawed and pale. When the vote passed, he stood up and walked out. No words, no eye contact. Gone. The room didn't cheer. It wasn't that kind of victory. It was quieter than that, more meaningful, a shared, heavy breath finally being let out after holding it for too damn long. After the meeting, people came up to me, shook my hand, patted my shoulder, thanked me. One woman said, "You know, I thought we just had to live with it." And I told her, "You do. Until you don't." A few weeks later, the HOA sent out a new notice. They were re-reviewing previously denied architectural applications, including mine. It came with an apology, not personalized, not emotional, but it was there. Buried in the bureaucratic language was the first official acknowledgement that they'd been wrong. And that was enough. A few days later, I installed the smart lock. Took about 10 minutes. No drama, no ceremony, just a soft click, a green light, and a tiny beep that sounded, at least to me, like a victory bell. Not because the lock mattered that much, but because the door behind it, that was finally mine again. It's weird how fast things settle back into normal once the noise dies down. There's no parade, no movie-style slow, fade to black. Just a Tuesday morning with coffee on the porch and the sound of a neighbor's kid biking past without a helmet again. I watch him make the same sharp turn around the corner that always makes me flinch and think, yep, still gonna be an ER visit one day. The HOA hasn't sent me a letter in weeks. Not about the lock, not about the trash cans, not about anything. Linda's still on the board, but now she actually talks to people like they matter. The new treasurer is some retired accountant who keeps showing up with color-coded spreadsheets and a moral compass, which is a refreshing change of pace. They're even reviewing the bylaws, actually reviewing them, with the goal of cleaning out the nonsense and making sure it's a living document, not just a weapon waiting to be used. I still have the binder. It's on a shelf now, behind some cookbooks I haven't touched in years. I haven't opened it in a while, but I don't throw it out either. Not because I think I'll need it again, God, I hope not, but because it reminds me of something I didn't realize I needed to learn. That I'm allowed to fight for peace. That protecting your home doesn't mean just locking your door. It means standing up when someone tries to turn your own key against you. I think that's the part that surprised me the most. How personal it all became. Not just about the lock or the violations or Gregory and his cold smile vendetta, but about the idea of home. Not just the structure, but the space. The right to breathe easy where you live. And I'm not gonna lie, there were days I almost gave up. Days I thought maybe they win just by making it exhausting. But something about the absurdity of it all just lit a fuse I didn't know I had. It's funny though, since all this ended, I've had neighbors talk to me in a way they never did before. Real conversations. Brenda invited me to her backyard for wine. Jorge and I joked about starting an unofficial Don't Tread on My Door club. Even the couple who used to cross the street when they saw me, they wave now. Sometimes they even stop to chat. Turns out a lot of people had their own little battles. Most just figured there was no point in fighting, until someone did. So yeah, the smart lock's installed. It works great, by the way. Battery life's solid, app is smooth. Does that satisfying little click when it locks, and I swear every time I hear it, I smile just a little. Not because it keeps people out, but because it reminds me who gets to decide who comes in. And that, for once, is entirely up to me.